basically jabbing at the brake and you can hear some metal on metal noise. So just sitting at a stop, if I pump the brake, nothing's happening. So it needs the weight of the car to push it forward to make the noise. Today we're going to be doing strut rod bushings on my LS400. So here is what the strut rod bushing looks like. They're kind of a bizarre thing because, I mean, really they're not something that every car has. Not every car has any type of lateral arm. This bushing basically just serves as a cushion between this strut rod, which goes front and back from the front and rear of the car. And so when the car pitches forward, this absorbs some of that motion. Additionally, it almost kind of acts as a control arm bushing as well. Pretty much serves the same purpose. This is also like weight bearing, so the strut rod lays in here while it's connected to the frame. Like any other piece of rubber, these wear out, and if you're searching for suspension clunks, all that kind of stuff, this very well could be part of them. Mine kind of passed a visual inspection. I looked at them, I thought they looked okay. 6 months later, they're not. They're clunking, I'm pretty sure broken. Just a really important thing to not forget about, basically. You also want to be careful because these strut rods are how caster is adjusted. That being said, as you saw hopefully in the video, when these are destroyed, your caster is no longer controlled. It's no longer fixed because this rod can move freely. And luckily, from a video that I watched, these should be pretty easy. Lexus calls it a strut bar, by the way. Lateral or radial arms, I think these are technically radial arms. So these are absolutely straight from China. I got them on Amazon. For a pair, it was about $100, alright? Car is up and off the ground, so now we're looking in the wheel well. Alright, so with the wheel off, we have our strut rod up here, attaching to the bottom of this control arm slash strut mount. As you can see, it bolts to the subframe, and that is the bushing right there. Then we need to unbolt the nuts from those studs, and then a big nut on the other side, and hopefully it'll come right out. So looking directly down from right around where the light is, underneath the car, under the subframe, we have one large nut holding the strut rod in. Once we undo that, it should come out this side. So in theory, we have just 4 nuts to undo. Now how hard those nuts are going to be is the question. Alright, so this large nut is a 24mm nut, pretty big. It's big enough to the point where it's good to know that beforehand, so you might want to run out and buy it, because not a lot of socket sets go as high as 24mm. Additionally, I put some penetrating lubricant on. I used BG's Inforce. Pretty good product. Definitely good to do that to start off with. Luckily where I live, not a lot of moisture, so we don't deal with a lot of rust, but I know a lot of people do. So an impact is probably going to come in handy, maybe a torch. Okay, let's see if I'm able to do this by hand with a pretty small ratchet. Okay, yeah, really easy. Extremely easy. Okay, that was not very tight at all. Alright, so this nut comes off with a washer. So just be aware of that. Those 2 pieces are probably going to be reused. Okay. So we got these 3. Pretty sure they're 14s. And I'm going to try and use an impact to just zip them off. Hopefully that's all we need. Stinky binky. I guess. I feel like those lose a ton of power, but we can try it if it breaks. Oh, it broke. Ouch. Always great for impacts. Just especially not if they're, wait, who made this? Taiwanese. Yeah, that was real worth breaking a socket over. Oh, fantastic. See, this thing's already wanting to come out. I could just push it right through. So that's amazing. That makes this really easy. This nut you don't want to mess with because that is your caster adjustment. So that changes the relationship of the wheel and the wheel well. So really important. Oh wow, look how loose that is. Wow. With that loose, I want to give you an idea of how important and how much force is really on that. But that's the movement, the caster movement that we have with that loose. So. Let's slide that out. Oh. I might have to do a little twisting. Okay, somehow it's all in one piece. All right. So our old strut rod bushing is definitely pretty toast. Surprisingly, it's in one piece, so that's pretty impressive actually. But plenty of cracking all around. Quite a big crack here. Yeah. I hate when you lose your nuts working on your car, you know? That being said, there are studs on a removable item, so if you break them, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm just getting them pretty snug, honestly. Ran them down with an impact. And now I'm just tightening them. Now keep in mind this ratchet that I'm using, it's got a lot of leverage, I should say. Pretty easy to over torque these, they don't need to be insanely tight. Oh, solid. Get this washer on there and the nut. Run it down. So I now have my torque wrench and we are going to torque this to spec, believe it or not. Might have to try out a bunch of different angles to make this really work. Use different extensions, etc. See, stuff like this, torquing stuff underneath a car is always much harder outside of a shop because of this. No room. Ugh. According to the service information, you're supposed to remove the lower strut mount, the upper control arm, all kinds of stuff in order to get that strut bar detached from the lower control arm, and it's a lot of work. This is a lot easier, assuming your bolts aren't frozen on there, they're not completely seized or rusted on there. You could do both sides in 30 minutes if you know what you're doing and you're quick enough. I will add, additionally, I do have, like, you know, good tools, but I didn't have to use them. I did this by hand. That big strut bolt is torqued to 87 foot-pounds, okay? Quite tight. I did it by hand with not a lot of leverage. Always a good idea to put some penetrating oil on there. Another nice thing you can do is get a larger pin punch like so and a hammer, and then just go on the edge of the bolt. So really, when you're dealing with rustier stuff, you give it a nice little vibration, a nice little crack with a punch. Sometimes it'll knock some of that corrosion loose and break some of that tension. In combination, those two things should work. If they don't, you might have to go to a torch. It's the first time I've kicked my ratchet to spin it and it's actually worked. Once you torque that big nut in the front, I think you should go back and just make sure those nuts are snug, just to be as thorough as possible. But that should conclude it. When it's on the ground, we're going to torque the wheels 76 foot-pounds. These bushings are pretty toast, as you can see. Good thing we replaced them, and I'm very sure that was my problem. One other thing that's worth noting, I did have these polyurethane front strut rod bushings. Here's the package. That's what it says on it, so it has some information. From PSB. So pretty good company. They have a lot of polyurethane bushings that I've used in the past. This kit came with these. However, if you look at them side by side, pretty huge width difference. So I've pretty much concluded I think these are for UCF 20s. They have a different style of arms. Okay, so originally I thought the noise, when I first started hearing it, was just the sound of the brake pedal operating and pushing that plunger. You know, kind of that sound. But it's very obviously different, but you can still hear that. But no clunking. And the way the car moves, pitching back and forth, is much better. I'm gonna drive it a little more though, and get a better taste.